Flyers getting set for a showdown in the Big Apple tonight as they start a 3-game road trip with a visit to the New York Rangers. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Smith. Welcome into the Flyers pregame show presented by Betway alongside Jason Martinez as the Flyers again getting on the road for the second time this year. It's they have a few of these long 3-game trips that span about a week, 8 days or so. They only play 3 games in the course of the span, but they're gone from home for a long time, and bit of a tall order for them tonight as they'll have these next 2 days, I guess I should say, is they'll have the front half of a back-to-back here tonight, headed to Toronto after this game, which is always a fun trip, involves customs and all that. So being pretty late tonight and get a rested Maple Leafs team tomorrow. So it's all that more important, it feels like, Jay, to get some points here on the front end of this against a Rangers team that's also off to a pretty good start.
Yeah, they've been scuffling. They've been a little different looking than they were a year ago. You know, they came in last year, Brian, shocked a lot of people. A lot of it on the back of great goaltending from Igor Shesterkin. Frankly, he was fantastic last year, full value for the Vezina. But they've been kind of scuffling along so far this year. It hasn't been quite as easy. There's obviously in New York expectations when you do what they did, the way they played in the playoffs as well. Some of their usual guys are off to great starts, like Panarin, 16 points in 10 games. Zibanejad, 12 points in 10 games. Adam Fox on that blue line, just a tick under a point per game. The new addition, Vinny Trocheck, off to a good start as a Ranger. Kreider not scoring at the same level he did last year here early on, only 3 goals, but he's got 7 points. But I think this is the only trip they have going into the Garden this year as well. So make full value of it.
Yeah, it is. And it's one of those scheduling quirks that popped up when the Seattle Kraken joined the league. It used to be an even distribution with where you were playing. You could play everybody in your division 4 times. You could play the Atlantic Division teams 3 times and the Western Conference teams twice each. Then he had to add 2 games to the Kraken. So what they did was they took one game away each from a division opponent over the course of the season. So now that there's a couple teams they only play 3 times in the Atlantic, or in the Metro, I should say. And this is the one, so they only get the one visit to the Garden this year. Staying on the Rangers for a moment, you mentioned Panarin and Mika Zibanejad, and they've been they've lived or died by those guys this year. The Rangers have scored 31 goals on the season, and Panarin's been involved in 16 of them. And when you look at the 2 of them together, they've been involved in 21 of the 31 goals, at least one of the 2. Those other 5 are mostly on the power play. Those guys are both part of the PP1 in New York, and other than that, it's been their lines providing it. In fact, I saw a bit of a tongue-in-cheek reference from some fans on Twitter today that the Rangers in 22-23 have 2 first lines and 2 fourth lines. So it's a very top-heavy offensive situation for the Rangers right now, definitely.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it when it comes to that team. They had to shed some people. They brought in Trocheck. That certainly helps them. But they're also a team that already has ridden a 4-game losing streak and lost 5 out of 6. Now, a couple of those one of them was in overtime, one of them was in a shootout. So they grabbed 2 points in those 2 games, even though they were technically losses. 3-2 overtime, the first win of the season for the Sharks. And then they lost to Colorado 3-2 in a shootout. And when Halak's played, they've lost. When Shesterkin's played, they've gotten at least points out of the game. So the goaltending depth may not be what it was with Halak as it was with Georgiev, but this is a team that, in their last game on the road, they just got back from a trip too. This is one of those weird situations, a weird trip too, Bri. First game of the trip across the street, basically, against the Islanders on the island.
Yeah, I didn't even count that one.
Yeah, that's not really leaving your metro.
No.
But then you go to Dallas on Saturday and you go to Arizona on Sunday, and then you fly back. I'm assuming they probably flew back from Arizona yesterday, and now they got this game home against the Flyers in this situation. So Flyers are catching them on the first game back from significant travel. So maybe an opportunity to keep this good start going. 5-2-1 to start the season, identical record to the prior 2 seasons. We just hope what follows is not identical to the prior 2 seasons.
This is my annual surprised moment that Yaroslav Halak is still in the National Hockey League. Like, this guy just won't quit. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
Flyers fans probably remember him most from the
2010.
2010 conference final against Montreal. But he was playing in the American Hockey League for Montreal affiliate when the Phantoms were still in Philadelphia. Like, I remember him from that. So, I mean, this guy has been around.
Playing
He's
Laval, right?
creeping real close. Well, then it was Hamilton. Now
Okay.
it's Laval, but it's Hamilton Bulldogs then, and the Phantoms would play them, a couple times a year. But he's really creeping close to a 20-year pro career here if he can keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, the 9th round pick back in 2003. You don't see many goalies still left from the 2003 draft, but and of course they don't pick 9 rounds anymore. And he has been around a long, long time. He's 37 years of age. His first year was in 06, 07. Think about that. I mean, some of these guys weren't even in first grade yet that are playing the NHL in 06, 07. That's how long he's been around. So, not going to get him tonight. You're going to get Shesterkin, and you're going to get a guy that makes you have to work every element to score a goal by him. He moves. I had Kevin Woodley on my Stick to Hockey live show, and he said some goalie coaches around the league said he moves like a hovercraft on his knees. He moves as good on his knees as a lot of guys move on their skates.
Wow.
And that makes him really and it's true. It kind of looks like he just floats above the ice in frictionless movement because he's so powerful and can move without extension and with extension. So he's a guy that is can stop pucks. But the other thing that we saw a lot last year, Brian, in particular with Shesterkin, his ability to play the puck. So dumping pucks where he can't get to them, soft dumps in corners so they don't go into that trapezoid, that he can play it and act as that third defenseman and start a breakout. You want to avoid him doing that because he can stretch the ice for him and really help out his D. And you want to get in on their D and start pounding them when they turn their back to the play.
Yeah, so it's a guy that's definitely kind of blossomed a little bit, and just when the Flyers thought they were done with Henrik Lundqvist, they start running into this guy and giving him problems. So they'll try to solve him tonight. Let's
Richard
take
Lundqvist to Shesterkin.
Just an abundance of riches. Remember, it was him and Georgiev, and they were going to have to pick, and it's like, my goodness. So
chose the right guy, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, they absolutely did. So let's take our first break. When we come back in just a few minutes, we'll continue here on the Flyers pregame show presented by Betway. We'll discuss this Flyers team right now, coming off a loss to the Carolina Hurricanes in overtime over the weekend, but probably their better of the two games between the Southeastern teams, Florida and Carolina, back-to-back. So we'll discuss that and what the Flyers have to look forward to here coming up at Madison Square Garden tonight. You're listening to the Flyers pregame show presented by Betway. Back with more in just a moment here on the Flyers Broadcast Network. Welcome back into the Flyers pregame show presented by Betway. Flyers and the New York Rangers tonight up at Madison Square Garden in New York with, I know there is other athletic activity going on in Philadelphia tonight, but hopefully keep an eye on a couple of games here as the Flyers try to get back on the winning side of things. Got a point against the Carolina Hurricanes the other day in Philadelphia in a game where they, again, went down 2-0, came back again, and were able to take a 3-2 lead only to see Carolina tie it in the late going and then get the overtime winner. And, I think, Jace, I don't know exactly what you could hear. I was down where you usually are on that night, and they were not happy. I'll tell you that much. There were some there were some noises coming from that locker room hallway that sounded like sticks meeting their maker. So it was to me, actually, I kind of was, I don't know, happy is the word, but I liked hearing it because you could tell that these guys, even here in October after you erase a 2-goal lead against a team like Carolina, you take the lead, you get a point in 3 out of 4 against those two guys in the homestand, and they're still not satisfied with it. So that was good to see, and I'm hoping that they're able to kind of ride that anger into a game tonight.
Yeah, I think they probably felt like they missed an opportunity because when you gain a lead in the third period and you can't lock it down,
right,
that's bothersome for the players, and that is a great thing. I don't think that they're looking at any kind of rebuild or the circumstances of who is and who isn't out of the lineup. They don't think practically like that. They think on a micro level. And what they know is we had a lead. We earned a lead early in that third period, and we weren't able to lock it down. And I was really interested about what Torts had to say. I guess it was yesterday that, in the beginning of the game, they were way too tentative and almost intimidated. I don't think he used that word, but way too tentative in the beginning. But he really liked how they played in the second half of the game and, started feeling confident in their play decisions and their ability to get the puck up the ice and, dictate the terms as opposed to reacting to them. But, you're playing a really good Carolina team. I don't. That tells me they're not looking for any moral victories here.
Right.
And I love what Torts had to say too, Bri, about, a reporter asked him about playing the opponent and, the measuring stick. And he said, I don't consider who we play at all. It's never about who we play. It's how we play. And that's really important because you can look at, it's always hard to win in the NHL against teams with projected this or projected that. There's always that variable in hockey of, the fact that any team can beat anybody and it's hard to get wins. And, those guys in that room went out there and, they battled their butt off to get back in that game after start, which I'm sure they didn't like. And they get that lead and just can't lock it down.
There's been a few things that have become apparent here in the first, 7-8 games on how John Tortorella approaches things. And one of them is that he says that his staff very heavily scouts the opponent coming up. They know what to expect from their opponent. They know their tendencies. They know what to look for. But he says they don't pass a lot of that information on to the players because he wants the players to worry about what they're doing. And that's a pretty interesting approach, I think. I really like that approach because this is a day and age where you have video of everything. You can see everything that everybody does. And then when you are going out there as a player and trying to worry about what the other team's doing, you sometimes can forget about what you need to do. Now, the exception to that is special teams. He says they do talk about special teams, and I feel like you kind of have to, in terms of when you're attacking, whether you're on the power play or the penalty kill, you need to, it helps to have an idea of what the other team's tendencies are doing so you can kind of play to that. But 5-on-5, they're just straight up looking at what they need to do and making sure they play their 5-on-5 game right, and they're going to let the rest come to them. And that's where I think he's talking about that they need to maybe do that a little bit more, at least a little more assertively in the early goings of games. At least that's what it's shown to this point because so many of those leads keep, getting away from them. And he says that, they can't keep doing that.
Yeah, it's a tough way. It's tough real estate to live on, I think, is what he said.
Yes.
And
Can't keep living on that piece of property. If you roll the dice and you
yeah,
land on Indiana Avenue every time with 4 houses, yeah, you're not going to win the Monopoly game, right? So
yeah, exactly.
you got to just keep on going.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, I think the other part of that too, and Torts kind of alluded to this when I talked to him over the summer. This is not something he would have done earlier in his career. This is something that's changed with him.
Okay.
He would look at, I'm assuming, looking at the tendencies of an opponent and look to shut it down. But the game has become so much more 5-man unit. Defensemen joining the rush and all of that. That if you sit there and you prepare your team for all these things on tape, and then if those things don't happen, then you're kind of like, oh no, what do we do? So
Right.
he has philosophical ways of defending now and philosophical ways of attacking, not situational per se. Because it's like some players, I've talked to a lot of guys over the years, especially, being in Philadelphia and the struggles with the shootout. Different guys like different amounts of information on what a goalie likes to do.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to goalies about this too. Like some guys want information. Hey, is this guy going to come in? And does he look to go high glove? Does he look to open me up and slide 5-hole? And other guys don't want that because then they play to the knowledge of what they think the guy's going to do. And it almost screws them up a little bit more because they think they're getting predictability, but what they're getting is a crutch.
Right.
And I think that's an area where Torts has said, okay, look, this is a game of variables. Let's not, paralyze them with information on what they have done because that it may be a predictor of what they will try and do, but it's not a guarantee. And if it's not going to happen, then they're going to be in a bad spot because they're so prepared for what they think is going to happen. When it doesn't, now they're really in shambles. So I thought it was really interesting that he said that. And again, it's about controlling what you can control, and the puck and your discipline and your gaps and your discipline structurally and all those things and effort, obviously, that he wants you to go out there and take care of. He's not going to give you paralysis by analysis, overanalyzing what another team does, because it's not about them. It's about what they're going to do.
Absolutely. Well, we're about 10 minutes away from the start of things up at Madison Square Garden. We'll take a break. When we come back in just a few minutes, we'll continue here on the Flyers pregame show presented by Betway, talking about the fourth line on this team that came up with a couple of goals against Carolina and what that might mean for this team moving forward as they've been looking to find some positive combinations. John Tortorella says today he can't break a line up after a game like that, so we'll probably see him again tonight. We'll check in on that and check in on Carter Hart as well, who will be between the pipes for the Flyers here tonight. We'll be back with more here on this edition of the Flyers pregame show presented by Betway in just a moment here on the Flyers Broadcast Network. Welcome back into the Flyers pregame show presented by Betway. Flyers and the New York Rangers tonight at Madison Square Garden. First of a back-to-back. Flyers will be in Toronto, north of the border tomorrow. to take on the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then off to Ottawa, where for the first time in his career, barring any incident, we'll knock on some wood, Claude Giroux will play a game against the Philadelphia Flyers. That comes up on Saturday night in Ottawa against the Senators. And just 1 week later, he's going to make his return to Wells Fargo Center. So going to get both of those out of the way in the span of a week. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up here for the Philadelphia Flyers. Fourth line, Jason, that other night, 2 goals by that fourth line. Lucas Sedlak talking today about how he feels pretty comfortable coming into this Flyers organization, picked up off waivers from the Colorado Avalanche. He played for John Tortorella in Columbus for 3 years, and then he did 3 seasons in the KHL during COVID and all that. Came back. Tortorella had good memories of him as a player, just wasn't sure if he could still skate. And he said today it turns out he can. So this fourth line, the spark that they can give with obviously you see what we all knew what Nick Delorier was going to bring to the lineup. And then you put Wade Allison's playmaking down there with Sedlak's skating ability, and all of a sudden you got a pretty effective fourth line here for the Flyers.
You really do. Sedlak knows, and Torts talked about this too. He knows, Lucas knows what to expect from him. He brushed him up on some of the latest details where he was over in the KHL, some things that may have changed in Torts' system and style, and the things he wants him to do specifically here. But he didn't know if he could still get there, if he could still handle the foot speed of the NHL. Sedlak has looked really good. A couple of rushes in that last game, Bri. He went hard to the net. One of them he got a penalty for, which I thought was a little bogus, but he's played really hard. That line has been setting up plays and finishing, and in particular in that last game. So, yeah, I agree with Torts. You tend not to want to, sit down on a line that scored 2 really big goals for you the other night. When they got it going, keep them together. You got enough problems and variables to fix lines that aren't going, to then break up a line that is going.
Right.
That would be almost audacious.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does appear, at least to start the game, there's not going to be any changes. Looks like it's the same top 12 pairings or line combos that the Flyers had the other night against Carolina. They are going to make a slight change on defense and put Rasmus Ristolainen back in his customary slot from last season with Travis Sanheim. So you've got Sanheim playing with Risto and Nick Seeler with Justin Braun, which is what we saw a lot of last year. And, I get that they probably might have wanted to ease Ristolainen in a bit. I know that Tortorella said they might see them together before that game was over. I can't honestly recall if we did or not, but, it's back to normal for those two getting the chance to play together.
Yeah, and those two had a good year last year together. So you hope that can pick up where it left off now that Risto has had a couple of games and knocked the rust off a little bit. And, I think it helps your third pair too, because now you have Braun and Sealer together, and you can play matchups a little better and situations a little bit better. Braun, 800th game tonight too, by the way, so congrats to Braun.
Yeah.
That's no easy task in this league, playing the blue line the way he's played. A lot of block shots in those 800 games, I can tell you that. But yeah, Ristolainen complements Sanheim because he is so physical. Travis is so long and such a great skater, but he's not the most physical guy. And Ristolainen is kind of a big physical freak, but he's got to make sure not to overdo things and over pursue plays in falling in love with trying to make that huge hit. He's taken a couple penalties in those first 2 games. The first game back, he took that penalty, and I thought that was a clean hit. In the second game, he just kind of over pursued a play. But Risto and Sanheim together should be another one of those interesting variables to watch tonight, as is Frost, Bellows, and McEwen together on the third line. I think that's got some interest and intrigue to it as well.
There are a lot of consistencies tonight, as it does appear the Rangers are going to trot out the same exact lineup that they did the other night in Arizona. That game, I want to say Glendale, but it's not anymore. It's Tempe, right? Is that where that
it's where the University of Arizona is.
Arizona State, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, because University of Arizona is in Tucson, but I think it's in Tempe. Yeah, and I have no idea where Tempe is. I just know it's not
Panarin.
in Phoenix, so.
Panarin in that game had a puck going down the right side, and Ghost tried to defend him, and Panarin he basically went for a ride on Panarin's back, big Ghost, and Panarin went right in. It was pretty ugly.
You mentioned block shots, and that is something we've seen a lot of with the Flyers this year. Ivan Provorov in particular, and we're used to him blocking a lot of shots, but Provorov coming into this game tonight, 31 blocks on the year. That is third in the NHL in terms of total blocks. Flyers as a team blocking 19.7 shots per game right now, and that's second in the league on average. They played a couple fewer games than several other teams, but on average, second in the league. So you can't sit here and say they're not drinking what John Tortorella is selling, because that is a pretty impressive number there as a group. Not just Provorov doing it, but D'Angelo's right behind him there, and Sanheim's got a bunch of blocks. So as a team, they're certainly getting it done. Now, I guess the next goal is to not allow as many shot attempts that you have to block.
Yeah, by being at the other end,
yeah.
and defending less. But Provorov is a selfless guy. He's a guy that will put himself out there in harm's way, in front of shots, as we've seen this year. I think, for all of the kind of crassness and stoicness of Provorov, I think as a player, he is a guy is a player that wants to please. He wants to please his coach. And it's why he answers the bell all the time. It's why he's on the ice and always so physically fit, because he doesn't want to ever be asked to do something that he's incapable of. So he prepares in a way that puts him in a position to do everything that's asked of him, and he's doing it again. I look at the Ranger team and I go, what are they great at? I look at their goals for per game, 21st in the NHL, just over 3.3 goals per game. I look at their goals allowed, 3 goals per game, 21st in the NHL. They're 12th on the power play. They're middle of the pack on the PK. They don't give up a ton of shots. I think the 7th fewest shots in the league, but they got great goaltending. But, what are they great at right now? It's early. They haven't shown to be great at anything just yet. So look for them to try and get it in order, and that begins tonight with the Flyers.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, back between the pipes, Carter Hart's going to be there. You may be interested to know that when I was talking earlier about the frustration after the last game, he was one of the guys that was pretty frustrated, and I don't think you get that a lot from him. Definitely thought he should have made at least one, if not both, of the 2 saves that resulted in Carolina pulling ahead. But, he again is famous for having a short memory, and he is, been absolutely consistent this season. Even when he hasn't been playing very well, he's played good enough to get the job done. So, I think tonight is going to be, for him, one of those games where he just tries to roar back.
Yeah, he didn't like giving up 4 goals. He's having a great season, and the numbers are off the charts, but he didn't like the tying goal, and he didn't like the overtime goal. So he's frustrated with that. He's going to try and bounce back tonight against a really good team, a team that will attack the blue paint with a lot of creativity with Panarin and Kreider and Adam Fox on that blue line. So he's going to have his work cut out for him here at the Garden.
Well, we got the puck drop right around the corner. That'll do it for this edition of the Flyers pregame show presented by Betway. Time to send it up to Madison Square Garden, where Tim Saunders and Steve Coates are standing by with our countdown to face-off. Flyers and the New York Rangers coming up tonight here on the Flyers Broadcast Network. Thank you, sir.